Thank you very much. Please be seated. Good evening, everybody. I want to recognize the Deputy Leader of LPM, Henny Seibeb from Korigas, the Operative Secretary, Mr. Isaacs, and the entire rank and file of the leadership of the movement and the membership who are tuned in tonight on social media as we're streaming live. Esteemed, distinguished guests, I see Mornay and others. Mornay looked older last week but younger this week, so I don't know what the man has done. As well as all other distinguished invited guests, including Chief Isaacs from Bersaba, who from time to time wants to be a modern man and comes to the city. The young people that are here tonight, they have come from Rhodes University and so on. We are happy to have them here, the Kandletus and others. Fellow citizens, it gives me great pleasure to speak to you on this occasion on a subject very important to us, the subject matter of nation building. From a divisive and painful past, this country emerged from ashes of racial segregation, economic and social discrimination, and leaped forward to freedom, democratic self-governance, and the right to pursue one's own happiness in a constitutional democracy. Nation building was touted as the basic essential political and social project of the new Namibian government. Nation building would underwrite and sustain the advancement toward greater constitutional democracy, freedom, justice, and equality for all. But it remained a hollow cry. For the many who have sacrificed their lives and limb, they did so wanting to see a free, united, and strong Namibia. As a people for whom the very sacrifice of life and limb was made, we gather to pay tribute to the patriots that departed this world and pledged allegiance to a new day, to our new republic on the 21st March 1990. The arc of history began to bend forward, and this day, the 21st March 1990, marked the commencement of a new foundation for a new vision, for better dreams, for a better day for all of us. From a society shaped by nefarious division to one where unity must thrive. From a people confronted by horrendous poverty to one where prosperity and opportunity for all must become a commonplace. Fellow Namibians, ladies and gentlemen, as our Republican project began in 1990, we reminded ourselves that we should never be complacent about the injustices and legacies of the past that still run deeply in the veins and the villages of our country. Together we committed ourselves to jointly take forward in faith the baton of justice, individual and societal progress, and prosperity as our rallying call to action. Our hearts were filled with hope and a renewed sense of purpose that our self-government project, brought about in solidarity with the international community of nations, would be one where the Namibian child would be included and valued as an equal citizen. We believe that our destiny would be sound, that it would be solidified by constitutional values of equality, justice, and freedom for all. For it stands inscribed in our founding document, the Constitution, that whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is indispensable for freedom, justice, and peace, and is further declared therein that whereas we, the people of Namibia, will strive to achieve national reconciliation, foster peace, unity, and a common loyalty to a single state. These were the marching orders. This is what we were meant to do. This project, we thought, was irreversible, or so we thought. fellow countrymen and women, just as many African countries at the initial phase after independence experienced, the process of state building was made superior to the process of nation building in this country. If we were then more analytical, nation and state building should have been simultaneous processes. State building, which is the setting up of state institutions, of the courts, the police, the military, the expansion of the civil service, and all ancillary work that ensures that we have a well-funded and well-functioning state system upon which the elected government could implement the promises of economic and social justice were created. No doubt, state building and these institutions are and continue to be important in the quest for our development. However, the most important process of nation building was entirely ignored and pushed to the back burner. Nation building, as a process, is meant to build a common identity, a national consciousness. Its product includes national unity and a collective one identity. It's a deliberate process. It's a process that requires political leadership agency. It's both a grassroots and a top-down process. But history teaches us that when the process of nation building is done from top-down, in a generation, society is transformed, national consciousness is embedded, and national unity and identity are cemented. But we overlooked this. There was a rush to get to office and get positions and earn salaries. That was the gravest error of the leadership of our times since 1990. And today that error has come to haunt this country in ways that we could never imagine. Today, in many parts of this country, state institutions, private sector businesses, our diplomatic corps, and certainly in our politics, ethnicity defines the interest and affiliation. In sports, ethnic orientation determines where you go, not your commitment, not your talent. At workplace promotion, it is your ethnicity that defines your success. Our divisions are so bad and so grounded that even some churches are structured according to ethnic orientation, and we know this all. Today, Namibia is fragmented. Ethnonationalism is rare. This is the sad reality of the 21st century Namibia. And we thought we had it done and dusted. We thought that the African countries of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s that got their independence in that era would be one where we would learn the lessons and improve, and that the 21st century Namibia would be a complete different nation. Friends, for 30 years, we elected the same political party to administer the public affairs of this land. We gave them exceptional trust and a huge mandate to deliver on their promises. A society of equals, a government for all, and a nation with all. But it wouldn't be. Barely 5 years into freedom, the cracks of disorder and betrayal began to appear, just as experienced by other African countries that attained freedom ahead of us. Just as it was with these African countries, the Namibian nation was never born. Just as it was with these African countries, the Namibian nation was only conceived in the academic and intellectual circles, but never fulfilled in the streets or in the boardrooms or in the high offices of the state institutions in tangible ways. Ethnic mistrust grew into ethnic exclusion, and ethnic distrust is what defines us today. Ethnic elite capture became endemic in the state institutions. Opportunities were handed to those that come from the same region or the same villages, always on language and ethnic basis. Stereotyping became normal, and you know this all. Many began to retreat to their ethnic bases, to their ethnic bubbles, seeking security and solidarity. Even at places as liberal as colleges and universities, an ordinary election of a student representative council began to be an entirely ethnically oriented affair. This is what scholars have termed ethnonationalism, which is generally seen as a destructive political and social phenomenon that detracts from the essence of the nation state. Namibia, after 30 years, we thought should have become a family of trust, of love, a nation of common identity, indeed a very strong and exemplary nation state. But it hasn't. We all know that any country desirous to succeed in its enormous task of individual and social development can never explore that journey as a divided society. Any country that wants to be strong and progressive can never attain its fullest potential of all her citizens amidst political, social, and economic exclusion of some by others. Any society that wishes to be recognized as a beacon of hope and unity around the world cannot achieve that accolade amidst the toil and turmoil of ethnic cleavages, which dilapidates the essence of citizenship and the common humanity of all of us. And surely, any government that governs through ethnic division, ethnic patronage, and ethnic economic empowerment is an unsustainable government set up for implosion and social and political instability. Ladies and gentlemen, as a matter of fact, any society that promotes tribalism and imposes ethnocentric awards on some of its citizens while denying the very same public goods to others on the basis of ethnicity is at war with itself. Soon, it will desolate itself. Namibia today, therefore, is at war with itself, and we need to urgently refashion ourselves toward nation building and genuine unity. Too often, in Africa, the self-demeaning appetite for ethnic solidarity over national interest, for peddling ethnic division over national unity, and above national consciousness, has destroyed the self-governance project across the continent from the 1960s. We know too well that ethnic war ravaged Zimbabwe of the 1980s. Ethnic war and the rule by warlords has defined the Somalia of the 1990s. Ethnic genocide descended on Rwanda of the 1994s. And recently, in South Sudan, the youngest republic on the continent, ethnic factions between the president and the vice president almost brought that new democratic project to its knees. Ladies and gentlemen, ethnic nationalism is real, but we never seem to learn the lessons from other African countries. It is a dangerous political project, and it cannot help us to reconstruct a new African nation and build successful nation states across the continent. In Namibia today, the nation state stands weakened and less representative of the people of Namibia. Ethnic political orientation in this land of ours has created a temporary false sense of power, sense of security, while ethno-nationalism in fact makes all of us less secure, less free, less equal, and less peaceful. The Namibian state of the 21st century is analyzed, perceived, and experienced from an ethnic lens, not as a steward of our vision of a new country that would locate itself in the aspirations of our children. The Namibian state today is a machine of exclusion and of negative discrimination. It is a cash cow for the elite and their associates, not as our own collective political stool. I want to draw some comparison between Namibia today and Rwanda before the 1994 genocide. Please bear with me. It's important to draw this narrative comparison so that we understand where we are in the trajectory of this country. From 1962 to 1994, in a 30-year period, in Rwanda, exclusion of some citizens in the public sector jobs on ethnic basis became institutionalized. It became normal. Opportunities for upward personal mobility in social and economic spheres in Rwanda was reserved for ethnic clientele. Elite corruption was shielded via ethnic loyalties, and a deep state developed, protected by fellow ethnic countrymen and women, and that state became conspiratorial in character. It couldn't be trusted. Any sense of national consciousness was seen as a nuisance, ridiculed and brushed aside. It was seen as talk by the weak ones that can never gain political power. It was seen in some instances as talk by others that merely want to be politically popular. When the legitimacy of the Rwandan government became questioned progressively, and its power base became eroded as a national institution for all, the leadership fell more and more back yet again to its ethnocentric base. They fell back to their constituency of language and culture, and they started more and more to invest state resources meant for the entire country into regions where the leaders came from. Tarred roads, service land, and all the goodies that every other Rwandan need became exclusively reserved for the ethnic groups from where the leaders came. And by so doing, Rwanda became even further fragmented. The seeds of self-destruction and genocide were planted, but now were becoming much more inevitable. And so we saw the genocide of over 800,000 moderate Hutus and Tutsis in 1994. Sounds familiar to some extent when you look at public service in Namibia. The fault lines and fissures of exclusion, corruption, ethnic clientelism are evident in Namibia today. You see it, you experience it, you live it, you hear it. It saddens you, it hurts you. You sometimes do not understand why this is happening. And so the silencing of a political discourse that speaks about these injustices is seen and is located as the notion of disturbing peace and stability. That very vehicle in the political frame that speaks about the dangers of ethnonationalism is itself considered to be ethnocentric. Underlying these verbal threats and venom, we could see in Namibia the deployment of troops inside the border of the country at a time when there is no threat from within, whether there is a terror group or any other threat to the country. Without any qualification, military is deployed nonetheless. The militarization of the parliament is real and evident today. Racial threats from military officials to some racial groups is real today. And I almost exploded in laughter when the current Minister of Finance a week or so ago posted on his Twitter account that he's been invited to Wagamas and that this is one Namibia, one nation, and that tribalism is not what we want. One of our friends, Ivan, responded to him on Twitter and said, "Hello, Minister, how about the procurement board within your ministry that is completely occupied by one ethnic group?" He never responded to that tweet. So whence the painful history and contributions of some Namibians is brushed aside as unimportant, the seeds of self-destruction become voices of anger and anguish, even of hate. That anger spills over into violence, and before we know it, it becomes a fully fledged civil strife of national image. Fellow Namibians, ladies and gentlemen, a nation is not defined by its borders and boundaries, but by its diverse people, united by a common cause and a value system, committed to a vision for the type of society they wish to see and the type of heritage they wish to leave for their children. This is what Fela Du Toya says, and I concur with his description, and wish to add to his narrative that shared aspirations, shared history, indeed a sense of belonging, are undeniable qualifications for a successful nation to exist. These aforegoing variables create a national identity which is the most remarkable basis for social cohesion. But what is the cause for the Namibian nation to be born? What must this nation that we want to be born stand for? What is it that this Namibian nation that we want to be born, what is it that it must be recognized for among the community of nations? And more importantly, do we have capacity for a nation to be born? These are the key questions that we'll have to argue about and debate and interrogate as we move forward to build this great country. But they are important for us to begin to structure a way out. And surely what we are giving here is not exhaustive. It is meant to start an important debate. As LPM, we firstly believe that Namibia can be born a nation. We were born as a state, as a republic, but never as a nation. We have no better choice than that. We are too few. We are a small population with a vast country with significant resources that can make a good life for all of us. And amongst the global turmoil of bigger countries becoming much more powerful, we can't be divided as we pursue social and economic development goals for our people. We will be stupid to try to be divided while major countries are speaking of rejuvenating their civilization. We have to reimagine and correct the state-building process that went off the cliffs. The respect for constitutional norms and values of freedom, democracy, equality, and justice for all are fundamental appeals that are still relevant today as they were when they were first drafted. And it's a solid basis to birth and grow a nation, because the Constitution sets the rules for disciplining our government, for pursuing an economic and development agenda, and it includes the individual as a quintessential component in this long and vital process. That's what we must stand for, a constitutional democracy where the rules are respected and everybody plays by the same rules. And if we don't do it, we are bound to perpetrate and perpetuate further inequality. We will see that respect among each other will diminish, because those that have the network, those that have the associates, those that have the connections, will continue to grow further richer, and the rest of us will be left behind. And so, whether you are a liberal or conservative, whether you are old or young, we can agree upon the need to respect the constitutional principles. Because the Constitution lays an important cornerstone of the individual as the core of the emphasis. Because the nation is about the human person, not the material being first. It's about the community and the deeper sense of belonging. Nation is not about bridges or roads and the infrastructure that governments claim that have been successfully developed, although that infrastructure is important. It's about you and I. It's the task that you and I have to be the generation that births the nation so that we can be part of something greater. It's about us perceiving what sort of heritage we leave for our children. It's about us beginning to create life and livelihood that we can be proud of, And that when our children reflect on our days on earth, they will be able to say, well done to the previous generation. And I have seen this, and when we emphasize this sometimes in an African context, many people don't find it important. But successful nations are those where one generation does its best for the next generation so that the subsequent generations are stronger and much more better off. And when I visited South Korea, that was so a profound passage that they kept on repeating. The previous generation did their best. We took from that generation. We have to do our best so that we don't fail the previous generation nor the subsequent generation. It's ingrained in their culture, in their language, in their thinking, in their moral compass. This important question of one generation doing its best for the next generation. It matters what we do today, what we say, how we behave today. And so we should be a beacon of hope for reference for the world to see, an example of success in nation building and patriotism. And secondly, justice and patriotism are important pillars of a strong and vibrant nation society. Those that have a head start in life, either due to past policies of the previous dispensation or due to sheer talent or hard work, should be enabled to take initiatives together with state institutions to apply their resourcefulness, their skills, to bear on the efforts to collectively improve the lives of all Namibians. You cannot today wish to weaken those that are strong, those that have the skills and the expertise, and think by sometimes they go without eating for weeks, not a single decent meal. It's real. When I was governor in Clara's region, and when the report came that even in that region, some people for a week, without having food to eat, choose to lick salt to survive. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And here I was worried about eating the next nice pizza or the next nice hamburger, and yet poverty is real. And it's extreme. And it pushes people to wish to die than to live such a life. Those of you who are students, who are young, who are not exposed to these realities, I'm telling you today, when you go to Omega 1, 2, and 3, you wonder how a human being can survive under those circumstances, because when you look at yourself, you will have died long ago. This is the reality of Namibia. As I was reflecting when they were broadcasting this documentary, I was thinking of the expensive cars that we are driving. The good food that we eat, the good clothes that we wear. Yet, more than 50% of our people can never even begin to imagine that generations after generations will ever get out of poverty. They just don't imagine it. They have concluded that poverty is what God has given them. No one can ever get out of it. That's what they even say to us when you go to Hobabas and sit with the San community. It's real. Additionally, we propose a Commission on Nation Building and National Unity. There will be an institution to help us follow through on a regular basis the progress we are making as a society to solidify our national building process, where the patriotic unit of Namibia first, before anything else, becomes a reality. We'll have to reimagine the civil service, the police, the military, so that at every level of decision making in these institutions, we have everybody represented equally. Yes. We will have to look at introducing a basic income grant. It's urgent. It's not a process to make people lazy, as is claimed by others. But it's that humanness, that human value and human worth that you want to go and establish in the hearts of the most downtrodden, that they have something little to buy food, to provide for their family. And it's not a lifelong process. It should be combined with other projects, as I said, of economic development, that you begin to create opportunities for people and you graduate them into the job sector. You skill them, give them sufficient training and graduate them into a job sector. Because if you also have to get to stick yourself for too long without any additional program of empowerment, you will continue to be granting people income without production received from such income. But the humanness is what I'm trying to emphasize. Our communities have experienced poverty that is so endemic that we've got to change this urgently. And as part of this nation building process, empathy should be a national value. We have to look at the development of communal land where our people live, because they do not have the necessary amenities in rural areas. We have to improve those spaces urgently. And we have to ensure that the services that people would ordinarily need would be brought to those corners: water, all the necessary amenities of health, better education, better schools, better policing services, and additional and diversified opportunities to enhance the rural economy. There is a huge chunk of land in the rural areas that is just dead capital. We've got to look at how you make that capital into a meaningful asset that can be used as a basis to enhance the life and livelihoods of so many people. And we've got to look at land reform in a well-organized way that helps toward poverty eradication and not to create further poverty. In doing so, land reform initiatives must also help society to be able to strengthen themselves and to pay tax to the central government in ensuring that we're able to redistribute those resources to the rest of society. And about all of these things, as I said before, I want to say this to all of you here and to those that are changing. Nation building starts with each one of us. Each one of us, individually, at your home, in your neighborhood, in your community. And it does not mean denying your cultural background, no. But it means embracing the totality of what this beautiful land offers you as a fellow human being, as a fellow brother or a sister. Because the extent to which you and your neighbor from a different background succeeds in your individual life is the extent to which the country succeeds as one unit. If your neighbor fails, if your neighbor is unsatisfied, if you get unequal opportunities that your neighbor also feels that he or she could have gotten, your biggest enemy is your neighbor. And so we start with the individual, to the community, and then to society. We need each other. We are each other's guarantors of peace, of security, of justice, and of progress. I must be interested in your development, in helping you to attain justice, in working for your peace, just like you should be interested in working for my peace, for my justice, for my security. And together, long before we know it, we have each other's backs. We believe deeply in our hearts as LPM that all Namibians want to succeed. Whether you are pitch black or very light in complexion, whether you are very tall, whether you are very short, whether you are rich, whether you are not so fortunate, whatever language you speak, whatever grade you have achieved, whatever shortcomings you have, all of us want to succeed. All of us want to leave something for our children behind. Because this nation building process is about our children. What I'm asking you tonight is to join us to first birth this nation. We have given birth to the republic, to the state. We have supported through tax money, state institutions. But but we have not yet given birth to one Namibia. It's not a difficult, it's not an easy task, but it's not an impossible task. Join hands and let's start the work of recreating our country. You know, from my own personal experience, if I may take a moment to reflect on it, and surely the experience of many other people, what you fear defines you. It limits you. It in fact deforms you. It produces only half of what you are meant to be. But what you stand up for, what you fall in love with, refines you. It sharpens you. It gives you that sense of inner peace and a passion like you have never discovered. It completes you, and it gives your life meaning and relevance. It allows you to light up a fire and rekindle a dead candlelight in another person. It generates an energy in you like you have never imagined before. And freedom, as a result of what you decide to stand for, needs fighters. The contrast that we have in our democracy is that we live in a so-called free country, but so many are not free. They fear for the jobs, so they would rather keep quiet. They fear for the loss of their tenders, so they better tolerate injustice. They fear for the next promotion, so they rather hide behind the lies and the deception. Only a free person can bestow freedom to the next generation. Only a free man and a free woman can bestow a respectable and sustainable heritage to the next generation. Complaining is worthless. Get in, dig in, drop the fear, organize, get involved, take the lead, build the country together. What we have seen is that the fear in the middle class is much more profound than in the ordinary people. They don't want to dig in. Because Karl Marx, while he said that the middle class is the greatest revolutionary class in the history of society, I wonder what Karl Marx would say today of the Namibian middle class. Because they don't want to dig in, but they are always with us behind the scenes, or so they claim. They are always supporting us from behind, or so they claim. Their success to get a good car, live in a decent house, a good neighborhood, get a good salary, have enough savings, their success to have good medical care, their success to send their kids to the best schools in the country, is the very success that has imprisoned our middle class Namibians. Because they can't lose that. And it's a paradox, in fact an oxymoron, that your success becomes your prison. That is not how freedom was meant to be. Success was meant to liberate you from one level to the next level. Not to have you stuck yourself in a prison of material gains that don't allow you to stand up for justice. Their material belongings is what they glorify, many of them. Shiny houses, shiny cars, and yet, despite all of that glitz and glamour, they so fear to lose. They have the biggest complaints to make about how many things have gone wrong. Never will they stand up, but they will be sending us to complain about this, to speak about this, to raise this in Parliament, but they would be afraid to be associated with us, to be seen with us. And so one professor of mine said that he finds it very contradictory that to be free, you have to be dumb, because the word apparently is freedom. And so we were laughing at it. But you sort of sit and reflect and wonder that if we delegate the process to fight for justice and for freedom if we delegate the work to prepare a better future for our children to some other person, and we may not even be sure who that person is. When we delegate that important responsibility to others, we in the process negate our responsibility toward our children. You can raise the best possible child with the best possible education, but if the country is not one nation, if the country is structured in a way that the skin color and your surname defines the opportunity that you get in society, if your language group defines or limits what you can become in your society, what have you done for your child? You have wasted millions and millions to raise your child, but you have not prepared the groundwork in which this child must find his feet. You have failed. You have done the greatest disservice to your child. And so the work is important. The work is urgent. And so we've got to get away from fearing what others will say. We have to get away from holding ourselves back because we are afraid to lose political friends. I can tell you that if for standing up for the truth, you will lose friends. They were fake friends anyway. It's better to lose fake friends, stand up for the truth, align yourself with those that work for the truth, that are concerned about the future, than to lose a whole country and to sell your child's future to people who will also be fake with your children, who will also continue with injustice with your children, who will oppress your children and will depress them in a way that you can never imagine could be done. And you've got to do it now while you're on this side of the grave, because on the other side of the grave you will be a ghost that no one will see, that no one will hear, and the tears of your child will not be wiped off by you because you will not be around. And so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention. Let's build this country. It's our common heritage. We can do this. We have the skills, we have the capacity, and as LPM, we call on every Namibian to stand tall, stand up, be counted, get involved. Don't fear, because the very people that you fear may actually fear you more than what you fear. Because it's the extent to which you fear them that you give them power and control over you. Thank you very much.
May we give another round of applause for our speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you very much for attending and being part of our event, which is going to have the ripple effect of a new Namibia. We will be having dinner soon. Our team will then just direct you to the venue. Once again, thank you very much and have a blessed evening.